Now, Egypt was one of the non-members of the BRICS that was invited to this year's summit. Previously, the European Union had been the biggest source of Egyptian imports, and to a large extent, it still pretty much is Egypt's biggest single trading partner. But keep in mind, China and Russia combined account for nearly 12% of Egypt's total trade volumes for part of the 2015-2016 fiscal year. Earlier on, I spoke to Ashraf Naguib. He's the Secretary General of the Asia-Egypt Business Association. I started our conversation by asking him if Egypt's business community expected any concrete gains from the country's participation in the 9th BRICS Summit.
We are coming out of two revolutions. We are going through a very vigorous and tough economic reform program, which we are starting to see the results of, but we still have a very, very long way to go. So on one hand, yes, this is again, a seal of approval that we are moving in the right direction. And I believe that there is a lot that will happen, not on the short term, but on maybe the medium to long term as a result of our meeting at BRICS.
Right. So among the BRIC member states, Brazil doesn't do much trade with South Africa, but with Russia and China, there's a lot of trade and investment that goes on between those two countries. In that sense, would joining this BRICS Plus idea actually have any tangible benefits to Egypt, considering the fact that it already has fairly strong trade and investment ties with at least two members of that bloc?
No, I'd add India to that as well. We have pretty strong economic and trade ties with India. So yes, I would put the three together. Now, what would be the impact? Again, if we're looking at Brazil and South Africa, we already have a problem with intra-African trade to start off with, and we need to be very focused on that if we are playing that role of being the gateway to Africa. On the other hand, it's not just the BRICS. Egypt is signatory to the COMESA and the GAFTA and the PAFTA and the Association Agreement and the QIZ and the Turkey-Egypt FTA and a lot of other of these, investment and trade agreements. We're also part of the One Belt, One Road, the resurrection of the Silk Road. We're talking about another almost $1 trillion worth of investments that will be coming in from China on that front. So what we really need from these countries isn't just the trade, but it is investments in infrastructure, because that's where we are right now. Our government is very focused on building the right infrastructure and the right regulatory environment for us to be able to bring in more foreign direct investment. People need to understand that in Egypt, we occupy only 6% of our total land area, and that gives a tremendous amount of potential for growth and development.
Right. In the long run, and I'm glad you brought up the trade angle to this, there's been a lot of talk about adopting common standards for imports and exports, at least within the BRICS bloc. Is that something that perhaps, if adopted, if, say, for example, Egypt, Russia, India, China all had, say, common trade standards or import and export standards, would that provide a much-needed jolt to trade among all four countries?
Again, I'll speak about Egypt, and I'll go back to what I said about the maturity and sophistication of the economy at this very point. Will this be helpful for Egypt or not? On the long run, yes, definitely. But on the short term, while we're going through our economic reform programs, I don't think that we can really standardize with these countries at this point. But again, that being said, on a lot of the agreements that I just mentioned, including the association agreement and maybe even COMESA, what happens is the smaller economies, the smaller size economies, for example, in the COMESA case, Uganda, Egypt, in the case of the association agreement, there's a tariff dismantling schedule, there's a grace period of time that can be put until these standardizations are put into place. So I believe there is a solution to the problem, but to answer your question, I don't think that Egypt is ready right now to standardize, especially on trade policies with such large economies and such large exporters and traders.